The Sharpest College Football Podcast. This is our Week 5 preview. Week 5, Robert. You know what that means. Week 5, the first week that we have in-season metrics. So no longer a lot of, I think, maybe, this feels like. We have actual numbers. We'll still say, I think, this feels, but it'll actually have real predictive numbers to guide our discussions and our plays. This is when the real playing begins. I'm fired up. How about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. We've been shooting in the dark the last couple of weeks, had some good calls, had some misses, but now we have actual data, actual real life numbers now, and I'm pretty excited about this. We are back with our dual model plays, which is always really exciting, and those are great. Honestly, they're really great. I love it when we both have dual model plays, and those work really well. And it's really cool how basically we have our models are not the same. They have similar concepts, but they are definitely not the same model. And when they both intersect and they both say there's value against a betting line, we make money. Generally make money. So we hope. But yes, let's I'm excited to have those back.
And we will get into the specifics on that in a little bit here shortly. And for those of you who are new to the podcast and catching me from the Early Read podcast, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. This is a very smart, informed, sharp guy decision with some very informed opinions that are they're formed to make us look smarter than probably we actually are. We both have models that we've built, and with that, you will be seeing us refer to a glossary throughout here. Go ahead and take a screen grab of this, paste it in your college football workbook, refer to it throughout this episode and the rest of the season. Hope you join us for the rest of the season. With that, here are the BuckMetrics through week 5. These are descriptive, not predictive, although they are descriptive enough to have some predictive elements, I think. The top 10 player apexes. Forgot to highlight basically the big newsmaker here. Mr. Horvath of Navy just jumps in there with the apex at 297, which is ridiculous. Don't know it's sustainable. Basically, he won't have the luxury of playing Memphis every week. The other new name on here, Arch Manning, jumps in at 206. Again, unless he's playing in the Sun Belt West and gets to play the Warhawks of ULM every week, don't see that standing up. And oh yeah, he has to keep Quinn Ewers off the job once he's healthy. But boy, two good performances. You couldn't ask for more from either of those guys.
Yeah, Archie Manning is interesting. This was the thing and I had pointed this out, I think, early in the season. It's weird that Manning came in and they paid him millions of dollars, clearly. And then he was just like, okay, I'm going to sit behind Quinn Ewers for the season. And okay, that makes sense for 2023. 100% that makes sense. But I think the expectation was he was going to be starting this season. And then Ewers decided to stay, and it's okay. Now, do I think Texas boosters care? No, I don't think they care that much about a couple $1 million. But it's questionable why Archie Manning would sit there. Now, obviously, they didn't deliberately injure Quinn Ewers. Obviously, that didn't happen, but it's funny how he gets this chance and he looks pretty good. Now, again, he has played in very limited capacity. Texas is going the whole Ohio State route of realizing that you should schedule a bunch of really bad teams in the first 4 weeks of the season, and then you actually place an actual opponent in like week 5. But again, though, he looks really good, and Texas looks really good. Now, let's see what happens when they play an actual team that is in the SEC. But yeah, so far looking pretty good, and this team is looking very legit. And Manning looks really good too. He's shooting up Heisman odds boards. I don't buy that. I think that's a great thing to fade that gives value on other players. But yeah,
Yeah.
so far he looks pretty good.
Also, got to say about Navy, since they've never thrown the ball like this before, like I've ever seen. And again, it's not like they're playing Memphis every week, but just having a guy that can throw like this kid, that's an interesting team. That's not something we've ever had to deal with before. And I've mixed feelings about it. It's going to be a fun team to watch, but I don't like how they treated Ken Niumatalolo at the end there, or really in the last few years in their 80s, pretty much a jackass. Maybe I'll just watch them with interest despite their athletic director. Other apexes of note, just was curious about this Curtis Rourke at a 172 with that successful transfer so far from Ohio to Indiana. Cade Klubnik, who was really bad last season by my metrics, improvement of almost 90 apex points from last year. I want to say let's see once conference play starts, but as we talked about in part 1, that doesn't really mean anything since the whole conference is a disaster. This was interesting to me. Tyler Huff of Jacksonville State. He wasn't going to be the starter before the season. I don't think he started the opener, but it looks like they might actually have something in offense there at Jacksonville State for Reach Rodriguez. They were successful last year because of their defense. Their quarterback play sucked. This could be an interesting zigzag zig really quick in Jacksonville State. Luke Altmaier, we were talking about in part one, Illinois way better. This is what I was hoping to get out of him last year. He was really subpar last year. Now he's got an apex of 130. I think getting the wide receiver from UMass, Jesus, from Mississippi has helped a lot. Zachary Franklin. Then a couple of disappointments here. Jacob Zeno, I had him as the best returning quarterback in Conference US or in the American. Really stinks this year. UAB stinks too. Maybe whatever your expectations of UAB were, Zeno was done undeniably great last year. Great, at least in the American Conference context. And stinks so far this year, but still his number is above that of Riley Leonard, which really surprises me. I thought Notre Dame getting Riley Leonard and then bringing in Denbrock, the offensive coordinator from LSU, would just be the absolute jelly that the peanut butter needed up in South Bend, but it has not worked. So outside the top 10, these are just the other ones I just found a little interesting. Any thoughts on these, Robert?
Yeah, I think of all those, obviously Luke Altmaier, that is a huge part of the reason why Illinois is so good right now. Again, your defense is good, but if you compare that with a quarterback that is good, that's the final icing on that cake there. That's the final piece of that puzzle that makes you that top 25 team. And again, you don't need to be Caleb Williams, Dylan Gabriel, Archie Manning. You don't need those guys to be your quarterback. You just need someone who's good and won't be the mole. And that's Luke Altmaier this year so far. Riley Leonard, though, that one is really crazy, right? People were like, oh, he's such a good prospect coming from Duke last year, looked so good at Duke, and only a 55 apex. Notre Dame wanted a lot more, and Notre Dame has not looked uh, actually offensively dominant at all this year. They
Mm-mm.
really have been struggling offensively in basically every game, even at Texas A&M. And even okay, last week they beat up on a MAC team, but even then it wasn't like
No.
we saw people beat up on a MAC team. That's not beating up a MAC team. Um,
You're being too kind to our guy Isaiah because they completely embarrassed
Sorry, that's
Purdue
right. They did
offensively.
destroy
So
Purdue. Sorry, okay, they destroyed Purdue, but outside of that game, they have not done a lot. They have not dominated
yeah,
other games nearly as much as that Purdue game. It's very concerning to me. Sorry,
bless you.
just how. Thank you. Just there is some real concern here with this with Riley Leonard, and he's definitely regressed a lot this year, and I'm not sure exactly why.
Yeah, I don't know if he's healthy. I can just tell you as a USC guy, I was really concerned about that, and I'm less concerned today. I'll just say that, and we catch him at home at the end of the season. So I've done a little bit different here because I kept on having weird numbers because of the difference in number of FBS games played. So I've just normalized GGAB based on a per game basis just to make it a little more fair. I'm not circling these guys, but this is definitely needs to be mentioned. Is Central Florida? We've gone over a couple weeks about just how scary they are offensively, and now okay, from a running game standpoint, the only two teams that basically are cumulatively better than you are the academies, who are both good this year. Let's frame it differently. The 2 out of 3 good academies, the other one just stinks. You're in a very good spot from a running game standpoint. Like we talked about Iowa, now they have a running game. Good for them. There's actually they could be sneaky tough. And I think they might be, boy, this is hard to say. Iowa's not overlooked in that they're always joked about, and I think they might be overlooked as like a team that can beat anybody, literally anybody this year. And Notre Dame, despite I guess this is the only thing that's really keeping them alive is just the running game. Now, I'd say a big chunk of that is probably beating up on Miami in the second half and just making fun of, for lack of a better term, Purdue. So those are my impressions on basically the top running teams this season. Anything stick out to you here?
Yeah, there is a couple things here. Is that so? This was, if you remember back when in one of the first iterations that we did with this with GGAB, we were like Michigan is like the best in terms of GGAB, and the comparison was like I can't remember if it was Army or Navy or no Air Force. It was Air Force at the time. It's they're better than the team that only exclusively runs the ball. And it's really interesting that again, now Michigan was the anomaly there. Everybody else was these run teams that were like that was their thing. They were running the ball. But Tennessee, top 10 team. Penn State, nominally a top 10 team. Iowa, not I think they're maybe top 25-ish. Ohio State, top 10. Mississippi, top 10. Notre Dame, top 25. Central Florida should be a top 25 team. Boise State, probably potentially the best G5 team. I think people are starting to, and even in the NFL, you're seeing it a little bit too. They're starting to follow the Michigan path of the run game first, and we're starting to see this kind of offensive. We're starting to see offensive innovation where people are saying, okay, people are realizing that they have to defend against the pass, especially in the NFL. Like offensive production of quarterbacks in the NFL is just down across the board, and they're realizing that they can't rely on the pass anymore. So now they're like, all right, we're gonna, because they clamp down the pass so much. Guess what? It opens up the run. So now these teams are trying to take
Exactly.
advantage of the run, and we're starting to see that in college here, and some of them are more ahead of the curve, like Central Florida, but Ohio State, Mississippi. Now, to be fair, some of that with some of those teams, specifically Penn State, Tennessee, Ohio State, Mississippi, some of them have beaten up absolutely horrific teams. Ohio State has not even played a team from even a Power Five conference, right?
They have not. No. Yeah.
Ole Miss, I think the same. They haven't played anybody from Power
Yeah.
Five conference either. So these are teams that are just absolutely, again, if you're Ohio State, do you really need to complete like a 30-yard pass to Abuka? Do you really need to do that, or are you just going to be like hand it off to Judkins and be like, go have some fun? This is There's probably some of that in this as well, but yeah, I think we are starting to see a lot more where, because defenses are realizing that to take away the big pass, it's opening up the run game, and we're seeing that in the NFL, and I think it's definitely trickling down to college as well.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, basically, to put it very succinctly, if you get baseball metrics, this is almost like a war in that, although it's yards above replacement, for lack of a better term, it is cumulative at the receiver position. So we've got some new names here. Nick Nash jumps on the board after that big game at Washington State. I saw that coming a little bit. Remember, I was a little bit bullish on San Jose State coming into the season, actually. Don't know if you had San Jose State. I went up playing them just a small play at Washington State. Isaiah Bond, young guy. Basically, this kind of was the missing piece when I've been talking to my guy Jeremy at Equinox. Shout out to him. He was a little concerned about the receiving core, but he thought might be the missing piece. And Texas looks tough. Now you got a top 10 receiver too with all the other things I got going on. Awesome offensive line and two serviceable, two good quarterbacks, one possibly really good. And what I'm this one bends my brain. We spent part one. It should have been just called Hugh Freeze and his quarterbacks suck, and somehow they have a top 10 receiver, which I don't know. Maybe because they're behind a lot. Maybe I don't even know. I don't just help me out on that one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's it's really weird. I guess the receiving yards have to go to someone, right? That's nominally
That's the
what makes sense
sequel.
to me.
Yeah, part one we talked about bad stuff happened is the name of the Hugh Freeze era. Maybe chapter one is called the ball's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Defensive apex. So this is basically a measure of the strength of the pass defense. Some interesting ones here. BYU, I don't remember them being this good on defense under Sitake before, so that's interesting. They really, as we talked about in part one, they did a number on Avery Johnson, who I think is still young enough where you can do a number on him, and it's not an act of Congress here. I like this Duke proof of concept under Manny Diaz. Remember, he lost a lot on defense too. That was a complete rebuild. Now, facing Michael Wright helps you quite a bit. You have an overtime game against Northwestern. You get a lot of Michael Wright passes in there that'll help your numbers, but still, that you can't expect a better number than that. And I don't know. I never know what South Carolina is or does or what to expect. They're going to be good or bad from week to week, day to day, season to season. So when they pop up on here, that's newsworthy to me. Anything on here stick out to you?
The absence of Iowa. That's the fact that Iowa's
Yeah.
not here is because Iowa is definitely normally one of our top defensive
Yeah.
teams.
That's
Period.
a good point.
Iowa State's there, which yeah we expect that it's good, but there's no Iowa here.
But Iowa State get to go against Cade McNamara, while Iowa had to go against Rocco Becht. Maybe that's the difference.
True.
Good point, though. All right, then the top 10 run defenses. This is where two kind of very different reactions here. We already outlined what a great offensive running game Central Florida has. When you have this defensively, you've got I almost want to just do a measure and just take the difference between your offense and defensive GGAB and say that's like just a measure of your dominance on the line of scrimmage. And I think that they would be among the very, very top teams in the country, Central Florida. We think of them as an offensive team, but then you throw this in there too. This is a scary team, and I have a play on them this week. Also surprising, Texas State. They're thought in their continuing to be just an offensive identity team, but here you got they're number 9 in the country in my measure of run efficiency. And there's your Iowa. Maybe they've just been using it all on the running side of the ball. So anything else stand out here to you?
Yeah, that's there's your Iowa right there. Yeah. No, again, it's mostly expected, but again, yeah, like Tennessee is a scary team this year, as is Ohio State, Ole Miss up there as well. Miami, Florida, a little bit of a surprise there, but again, not particularly tested there as well. Texas State, yeah, Stanford. Again, they were a horrible defense last year. See,
Yeah.
good to see them up there as well.
Yeah, I think Stanford's still vulnerable to the run or to the pass. So I think there's a little bit of a skewing of those numbers.
Hmm.
And if you're new, the bum list. So this is where we take the bottom 10 of the Apex measure. And believe me, this is absolutely completely wrong. The school for number one, that is not Joe Labas of Central Florida. That is Mr. Labas of Central Michigan. Big mistake on my part. My apologies for that. Really shocking here is Jalen Rayner at number 7. I thought that he, as somebody backing Texas State, over 7.5 wins and to win the Sun Belt and to make the playoff, I thought he's the one guy that scared me, especially in the divisional structure of the Sun Belt. You just lose one to the wrong team and your season can be done from a postseason standpoint. And Rayner, I think, beat Texas State last year, and I don't know. Maybe he's not the same player. Maybe he is the same player. He just got more Butch Jones around him and in him and just to take him down. But this one surprised me. We've seen the other names here on here a bit already, except for Brett Gabbert. They've had a tough run playing a couple of Power 5 teams, so I can forgive that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, Jalen Daniels, man, fifth, like 18 apex, and like just craziness with him being so low there. Not expected at all. And I don't know what's up with them and what's up with Kansas this year, but just definitely underperforming expectations. Just and again, a loss to West Virginia, just not the same Kansas we saw last year.
Up from a -11 a week ago, so he's showing progress.
Improvement. Still lost the game though. Still lost the game.
Yeah. All right. Don't have the full blown power ratings yet. I didn't include them because there's still enough. There's still some weird stuff going on. Couple of aberrations are just skewing numbers. I will just say, as fun as they are to watch, I'm pretty confident Washington State is not the number one offense in all of the nation. I saw that, so I said I will not publish these just yet. I think one more week will straighten things out. In terms
Yeah, I have my model weirdly likes Maryland. I'm not sure why. My model also does like Washington State too. I'm not sure why it likes them, but probably because of the same reasons. They probably destroyed. Oh, it was probably Texas Tech. It's probably what it.
you know what it is. If you want to get into it right now, just I'll try to keep it brief. San Jose State just absolutely crushed Air Force and Kennesaw State defensively. Absolutely crushed them. And when you have two data points like that in a limited sample size so far, they're almost like self-reinforced. There's, I guess, an autocorrelation. You might know this better than me, and it
Yeah,
just makes them seem stronger. So then you have Washington State. Just they scored 54. Now I guess there was an overtime element too, but they were just getting chunks of yardage. And so my model said you've got them doing that against what my model thinks is a great defense, and I think that makes Washington State look too strong, and then also Washington too strong as well, as Washington basically played them tight.
yeah,
And I'm seeing that boomerang in one of my picks coming up or plays here a little bit later, but I'm sticking with it because we'll get to it in a minute.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
So with that, these are the week 5 previews. If you've been with us in prior weeks, this is going to look a little different. I'll walk you through one. Basically, what I have when we're breaking these down, I have in the top half the descriptive but not predictive. Oops. Not descriptive but not predictive metrics in the top half here. And then the bottom half, I have the ones that are predictive from my model. Then I have my projection and Robert's projection as well. For just starting with a game that I'm not playing, but basically it's the game of the week, or it is the game of the week. Just curious where you land on this. We've got this so close that this is not enough of a margin for either of us to really bet. You can if you like, but just historically, this kind of margin to the line is not enough for me to bet. I look at this, I see that Alabama just they have a really explosive passing game. It's like the best case scenario what we thought about Milroe under DeBoer being almost like a better version of Penix last season. We've talked about this, and even more so now. You've got just Carson Beck just being good, but not even as good as last year. He's not shown the same. I've got more explosive play at the wide receiver position from Alabama than Georgia. When your defensive apex is this low, you're fine no matter what. And maybe Alabama gives up a little more run. That I can see that for sure. But I look at all these, and I think I like Alabama. My model just likes Georgia by one here. Your model likes Alabama too. The most explosive player on each team, you've got Ryan Williams as a true freshman, has just been awesome. Sixth in the country. Now he hasn't faced a defense like Georgia. Georgia's most explosive guy is Dominic Lovett. They're struggling in the post Brock Bowers era. I like Alabama here. I'm not going to play it, but I'm just, since it's the game of the week, just curious where you stand on this one.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this one. I think I'm not playing this. I think I'm not going to touch it. But if I did have to touch it, if this got up to 3, I would say Bama. Um, I think 3 would be enough to get me off the sidelines on this one. But no, this is one where it's like the book says Georgia -2, and every statistic says Bama's the better team. And the people are going to be like, oh, you know what? Yeah, but Georgia's that good. They're not really that good. They played Kentucky pretty close. Yeah, they beat up Clemson, but Clemson is suspect. And now and this is the thing, the benefits of our model is that we look at that game. The model, again, we don't do this physically. The model does it automatically for us. Just because we sit here and we think of what the model sees, right? So the model sees Georgia beat up Clemson and initially thinks that's great. Clemson was a good team. Georgia crushes them, and people are going to see Clemson beating up other teams. They're going to say, "Oh, Georgia crushed them. That means they must be so much better than Clemson." But they must be so much better than the other teams because Clemson's destroying them. But as you see, App State put up the points against Georgia, against Clemson, and North Carolina, NC State put up the points against Clemson. You're then, what did Georgia do against Clemson? And that wasn't that impressive, right? So then the model's kind of downweighting that Georgia
Mm-hmm.
offense. And this is what a lot of people don't realize. People don't see that. Well, obviously, they see the scores and they see, oh, Clemson's rolling. Georgia completely shut them down. It's okay, they did, but there's nothing really to weigh that against. And our model does that. Again, we don't we are the whole thing of us is that we're smart people, but we make models that are smarter than us to see the
Yeah.
stuff that we don't see. And that's the point, is that the model is smarter than us and it sees that and it automatically makes that adjustment for us. And that's why I think you have to be on Bama here. You're in Bama, you're at Bama, you're getting the points. It's the better quarterback, the better defense too, except for maybe the run game, but that's marginal at best. Bama's just a better team. They've been a kind of scary team now. There was that weird game against UCF, and they figured that out. They were competitive with Wisconsin for a bit. They figured that out, but Georgia legitimately should have lost to Kentucky. They could have lost to Kentucky, and they didn't, right? There was no point in time when I was like, okay, Bama's seriously going to lose to USF. But Georgia could definitely have lost to Kentucky there. There was definitely sequences where they lost to Kentucky. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the Bulldogs here. I think Bama might have this.
Yeah, it just, if we talk about, and again, this is not our sweet spot, but just if I look at it, if I look at this number, the difference in apex and the difference in line per game, I've got Alabama as a much more explosive team. And then if I take my offensive GGAB versus my defensive GGAB, basically that's going to be a measure, like I said, of how dominant am I on the offensive line or on the line of scrimmage. This difference is 96 for Georgia. It's 29. I've got a more explosive and a more physical team in Alabama, which doesn't really sound right in the first year after Nick Saban, but that's what the numbers tell me. There's enough reasons to watch this game, but it's going to, just from a nerd standpoint like us, it's going to make it even more fascinating to watch.
And this is the thing, right? We always assumed that Kalen DeBoer was going to come in and make Alabama Washington. And I think on offense, in some pieces he did, but I think he realized I think some of the reasons why not Wisconsin, Washington was the way they were was because they didn't have, hey, we don't have a bunch of 300-pound guys. We can't run, we can't just shove the ball down your throats. We have fast guys. We have a really good quarterback, so we're going to throw it. But we don't have those fast guys, and now we don't have those big guys, those big dudes up front. And now you're at Bama, and you're like, okay, I still love the Michael Penix offense. We need 3 yards. We can get 3 yards. We're just bigger than them and stronger than them. They didn't have that before. So
Yeah.
maybe there's a bit of just he's DeBoer sitting there in practice scheming it up, and the offensive coordinator, but our guys are just bigger. Just have them run. He's sure, yeah, let's just go do that then, and then they just do that. Yeah, that's the thing. Like before, you have to scheme up this. Oh, here's a trick play, and it's gonna be like a play action, and we're gonna scheme up this wide open receiver downfield. It's just they're bigger than them. Just run it down their throats. So it's like, oh yeah, okay, let's try that. Then they're like, wow, that got us 8 yards. That's even better than we thought. So there may be some of that where this team is just like a really interesting mesh of Washington and past Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. The first dual model play of the year officially. Arkansas at Texas A&M. I spoke earlier in the season that I'm not convinced about Colin Klein as the A&M coordinator, and this is a big problem right here. I think what you're seeing is this offensive coordinator is now over here that's fixed this to some degree here. The offense sucked last year at Arkansas, and A&M is suffering with Colin Klein filling in. It hasn't worked. You've got a much more explosive offense here for Arkansas too. Defense looks like about a wash. I've got this Arkansas by 5, as do this number's down to 3.5. It was available at 4.5, maybe even 5 some spots on Sunday. So this is a dual model play. And with this kind of margin, this is good for both against the number and money line. So I like both those angles. What do you got on this one?
Yeah, I like it too. I like that we're both gonna sneakily on the under here. You're just on the under. I'm a bit more on the under. But it's again, this is a dual model play. When I saw this, I was but Arkansas is not that good. But yeah, we both like this, so I'm down for it. I've bet this one already. Let's go.
There's Arkansas is a lot better on offense than I think people expected during this season. Dan Enos just killed the offense last season. And the defense has been a little bit better too. So this is what I call just a UFO. Had no interest in playing this until I ran the numbers, and lo and behold, we both have this as an over. Just real quick about functionally how this works. For an over or an under play, you basically need an elite unit on that side of the ball. Cincinnati somehow is an elite offense. Not sure how, but congratulations to Scott Satterfield. So we've got an elite offense here, and then we've got margin here. I've got a total of 67. Robert's got a total of 71. That's more than 7 over the total here. So this is definitely an overplay for me. Just historically, we do good on overs. We do exceptional on unders. I won't play a full unit on this. The other thing too is early in the season, I want a couple more weeks of data points before we can get the totals. Totals are playable much later into the season. So I'm playing this for about 0.6 units or so. The thing is, if there's one thing that sticks out, I'm not sure. I'll put this nicely. I want to see how well this stands up, this 3.1. I think that there's just a lot of things gone wrong for North Texas in that number in that one game. And I think that Texas Tech has shown an ability to be very accommodating um, when it comes to being a defense that can be had. Now, maybe it's a different step at home, but I like the over here.
Yeah, actually, the more I think about it, the more I like the over too. And one point I will make on this too is that in the off season, I think my model was a bit inflated in points last year. I think I've cleaned that up. I think it's a bit more in line now with because there's a lot of
Yeah,
reasons why. I think I've cleaned it up a little bit because it dealt with the play clock. I think it was too short of time running off for running plays, and I think I've cleaned that up a little bit now. So I think it's now more time running off for running plays. And again, a small change, like a 5 to 10 second change, adds up a ton over
yeah.
the course of a game, and that's a ton of points shaved off. So I think I've cleaned up my margins on totals a bit this year. So I'm happy to see how that. I'm excited to see how that goes.
I think you had USC with 100 against Colorado. They were on that pace in the first half, but typical Alex Grinch fashion, they couldn't hold it up. All right, here. Oops. All right, this one I did not see coming at all. Had no interest in this, but this is my. I put this 0 here advisedly, and I'll get into that in a second. So basically, you've got Eastern Michigan, who's not great, but Kent State is just they are somehow they're worse. I'm going to just put hands on the head here because I feel bad. We knew that they were going to be one of the worst teams in FBS coming into the season, but this is just a disaster. This is such a disaster. Now, they've had a couple of tough games. They played Penn State. I forget who else they played. Jesus, yeah. All right, so that explains the defensive number, but the offensive number, this is just not functional. It's a disaster. And literally, I have a star here. Can you imagine why I have a star here? I've made references to this happening before in prior seasons.
Is this the negative points?
Exactly. This is the offense so bad it makes light bend. I think my total here was like 32, so I had it 29 to -3. Don't ask if you really want to know. Look at our season preview in July. So I just went with the total of 29 and assigned it all to Eastern Michigan. So I've got two touchdowns of clearance here. You've got 10 points of clearance here as well. Don't know if you had this on your radar before this, but Kent State is so bad. As soon as I saw this, I said, "Yeah, I can buy that. Absolutely buy this in a second."
Yeah, that actually seems right. And Eastern Michigan has actually not been horrible this year. Looking at it, I don't hate this play. I actually like this play. So I think I played this one already. Yeah.
And again, 9.1 is -9.1 on defense is really bad. I don't have any context for how bad this offense number is. There isn't, other than we'll see a team equally as bad as that later. All right, next one. This I'm I'll frame it this way. You tried to include FCS games in your model and it blew it up. Where I don't know, you have a what like Austin P is like the 10th best team or something silly like
It was
that.
some. No, it was Incarnate Word, I think,
There you go.
because they have
Okay.
insane offensive stats.
So we both exclude FCS results from our models. And I think that might explain some of this because Florida International just lost to Monmouth, former home of UVA. He said sarcastically, great Tony Muskett. Maybe there's a great program at Monmouth that's just in the works of creating a talent pipeline to the NFL. I don't know. Maybe the gap is that we both, I guess we both were able to normalize that FCS data and include that loss for FIU, and here we'd have a different result. But if it was that bad, I guess losing to Monmouth, wouldn't Louisiana Tech be a bigger favorite than 2.5 if that was truly representative? Louisiana Tech's just struggling on both sides of the ball, particularly offense. There is a little bit of I like this in that McIntyre's a defensive guy. He's got a good defensive apex. Now playing Cam Fancher will do that to your numbers. But we've both got I've got the dog here by 13. You've got the dog by 19 here. Um, I'm not going to go a full unit on this, but I'll definitely do partial plays on both money line and if I can get three against the number two.
Yeah, I this one is a little bit iffier because of that loss, and we can't really incorporate that. Also, FIU did lose to FAU, but Louisiana Tech is also pretty bad too, right? And they're at home. I don't know. I think if there's one to pass, it'd probably be this one. But yeah,
Yeah.
this could potentially be a play, though. This could be a play.
Here's a real UFO. No interest in this until it popped up on both of our numbers. And once I did this grid, it told the story why. Although I might have a question for you about what your model is saying on this. So Middle Tennessee, who, 265 defensive apex, that's not good, kids. That's really bad. That's basically Memphis last game all season. Um, I can see how I get it close. Middle Tennessee does have an explosive offense here. They're facing a pretty bad Memphis pass defense. Middle has two receivers in the top 40 in terms of explosiveness. That's interesting. Their quarterback actually was sneaky not bad last year, and whatever Derek Mason has done to screw up the defense, he's not done on the offense. Actually got Middle as a better offense in this game between the two. 24-point dog, I have them losing by 13. You can explain to me how you have you have Middle by one, but that was enough confirmation for me. So I'll take the 24. It's up to 25.5, I think now. So I'm definitely taking that.
Yeah, my model. I'm a little iffier on this one. My model really liked Middle Tennessee a couple weeks ago for some reason, and I'm not sure why it did that.
You know what's
Um,
funny? When I was on the early read, that's what Reed said. He said, "Yep, disagree. I tried the Middle Tennessee train ride and it sucked," or whatever he said. And I'm wondering if it was the same spot.
it must have been
Um,
actually, because it was 2 weeks ago. It wasn't last week. It was 2 weeks ago, and it was against. I don't remember what it was now, but I was like, oh, they could beat them, and then they just didn't. And I don't remember what game it was, but it was yeah, I was on them a couple weeks ago in a similar kind of spot. But yeah, that's interesting that he was on them as well. It must have been the same game. but my model has not apparently quit Middle Tennessee. So I don't know.
And I can
I'll
see
think
the
about this.
path. I can see that right here. Again, this is an explosive offense. This is a very obliging defense. You've got
Yeah,
nobody here. Nobody in the top 100. Middle has two. I
like the
don't see
question
the
is,
win. No
yeah, I
offense to your
mean,
model, but I think directionally it's the right play here. Getting 25 and a half.
yeah, it seems crazy. 25 and a half, like 20, 25, 24 and a half seems like a lot of points. And Memphis did not look particular like they looked really bad there against Navy. And one of the things they say is that usually it watch out for the teams the week after they play the triple option because they're very beat up. The defense is really beat up, and now you're going to put in a potentially explosive pass defense against them. I don't think they should be 25-point favorites. I don't think they should be. But and again,
Mhm.
Middle Tennessee versus Memphis, that's barely that's a bus ride away. That's nothing too bad. This isn't like other side of the country. You're getting 25 points. I don't think there's 25 points difference between these teams.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, Isaiah. I think from a descriptive standpoint, this matchup is right here. Negative 21 Apex, that's not good. And you've got to, as much as we think Colorado's got issues, I think Colorado's functional passing game is probably, you know, driving this up a little bit. I think that this 76 is probably closer to about a 40 when you're talking about when you're facing a team like Purdue. I think that's the beginning and end of it. I don't see a lot of points being scored here, and our models don't either. We both, what I've got the favorite by 19 here. You've got them by 30. The number is either 9.5 or 10, depending on where you shop. This is an easy call for me. I'm already on this one. Have you played this one yet? And have you
I think I played this
told
one. Yeah,
Isaiah?
we have not told Isaiah yet, but we'll let
All
him
right.
know.
So, anything else on this, or do you think it's just as simple as just like that Purdue offense? It's not going to, and a good bounce back spot for the Nebraska
Yeah,
defense too, right?
I think Nebraska, Purdue, not the furthest away either. Purdue is in Indiana. Nebraska is only a couple states over, relatively short plane ride over, so nothing too crazy there. I think Nebraska is the team that's going to be like the most value for us all year long. I think it's going to be like, okay, and we've been doing a really good job of nailing Nebraska picks, right? We're like, okay, they're going to destroy Colorado. They did that. They're not that good. They're not that much better than Illinois. Nailed that one. But they are that much better than Purdue. And I think it's if we're doing a better job of tracing how this Nebraska team compares to other teams, like basically if we're better on that kind of spread lines, then it suggests the books are either off because they haven't captured yet fully, or there's betting inefficiencies where there's people betting against Nebraska, which God help you if you are. But or they were betting against them and then they were on them and now they're against them. I don't know, but we seem to be having a really good track record on figuring out if Nebraska's going to win or not and cover a spread or not. So I like Nebraska here.
I'm wondering too what this number was maybe last Thursday before Nebraska lost at Illinois. I'd
True.
say it'd probably be closer to 14, 15.
See, is that the point, right? Because it's are they like do they think are they maybe have they not caught up on Illinois yet? Like, do they still think Illinois is
That's where
down
I'm going, which
here?
is weird to say against a team that's ranked.
Yeah,
Um,
because actually think about it, right? Because Illinois is 17.5-point dogs to Penn State, right? So
yeah,
clearly they haven't caught on yet. They
yeah,
clearly think Illinois is pretty bad. So
that's,
therefore, oh,
yeah.
Nebraska, they lost to Illinois. They must not be good. Okay. And again, this is, I don't think these games are on at the same time, but this is one of the ones where you could say, oh, okay, if Nebraska crushes Purdue, actually, no, I think it's the other way around. If I think this game is later in the day, because yeah, I think, let me
I
see
think Penn State
here.
is earlier, right?
Yeah, the Penn State game is earlier. So if Illinois, let me see here. Wrong Illinois. Yeah, no, Illinois. Oh, Illinois is at 7, and Nebraska is at noon. So the Nebraska Purdue game's on at noon. So if Nebraska crushes Purdue, just immediately bet on Illinois. Just unload a clip on Illinois.
That's on Peacock. Woof. Peacock.
We don't even
Sorry,
get
Isaiah.
Peacock. We don't even get
All
Peacock
right.
here.
Yeah, I think we're of the same mind here. Also, Nebraska's already got their first road game, conference road game out of the way. They were at Illinois last week, so I think that
Mm-hmm.
they're just in a good spot here. Yeah, I I don't know. I could probably have a whole episode about just how bad Tony Sanchez is, and I don't know. I think we're at the point where we can say if you liked the Tony Sanchez era at UNLV, you will love the Tony Sanchez era at New Mexico State. It ain't working. It's not going to work. Negative 31 Apex. Congratulations on that. These are two bad defenses, but you've got some form and function here on the New Mexico offense. You all right, these are both just bad, but this is just we can't snap the ball bad for New Mexico State. I've got the favorite by 29. You've got them by 23. They're only giving 9. It was at 7.5, I think, when I first saw this. I'm already on it, but I just, even if the number goes up to 10, I'd be fine with it. Our margin, just for those who don't know, if both of our models basically have a touchdown of margin against the line, that's bettable. Reed actually just pointed that out. He says, it sounds like your model is more directionally than precisely correct. And I said, absolutely, that's it. I build in a touchdown of margin for both the models. So this is it. I'd like, even though he's got a bad apex, he's still worlds better than New Mexico State. So I like Dampier as just a runner. I guess the other thing too is even though this is a bad defensive number here, at least I have Bronco Mendenhall here in this guy's corner, this squad's corner. Whereas here I have Tony Sanchez to coach this guy up. That's not even a discussion. Not even a discussion. So I'm all over the Lobos here. Already played it. How about you?
Yeah, I like them here too. This is a team that is a fun team that wants a win. They could potentially get their win here. Again, shows you how far we've come, right? This New Mexico team opened up the season as what? 3 touchdown, 17-point favorites, 17-point underdogs to an FCS team. And now we are in week 5 and they are now 9-point, basically 2-score favorites against an FBS team. Now, not a good FBS team, of course, but an FBS team, right? That is how far we've come here, right? That's
Yeah.
nuts. That now New Mexico State is so bad that a team that was an
Yeah.
underdog to an FCS team, a multi-score, 3-score underdog to an FCS team, is now a 2-score favorite against them.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Some movement by the Lobos, but a lot of movement by the Aggies here. Rest in peace, Jerry Kill Aggies. That's all I can say about that. So
Yeah,
you're going to play this one then? Or have
yeah.
you?
I think I did play this one actually already. Yeah, I think I got it at
Okay.
9.
All right. All right. Hold on. This is now we're getting to the ones that just require a little bit of a leap of faith. I again, I like this. I really like this when it's your defensive coaches or your head coach's side of the ball. This was 180 a week ago, and this got worse against a Sun Belt East team. I'm not in love with Malik Murphy, but I can tell you I'm a lot more in love with him than whatever this crap is that's on the defensive side of the ball for the Tar Heels. I've got the favorite by 11. You have them by 16. They're giving 3. You know, it just seems too soon for a rebuild after Elko, but I think North Carolina is clearly just that bad. I've played this. How about you?
Yeah, I've played it too. Duke is like sneakily not bad. Like again, we're not talking about winning the ACC here or anything like that. We are just saying this team is not bad. This team is, I think, on pace to make a bowl. I think they're 3-1, right? Their only loss being North. No, they beat Northwestern, right?
They beat Northwestern in overtime. Yeah.
I can't remember who they lost a game. I can't remember who it was too though. But this is a team that's not half bad. A decidedly not bad team. North Carolina, I think, is a bad
Duke is
team.
4-0.
Oh, they are 4-0. Wow. Okay. Sorry, I thought they lost a game. This could be basically the win that gets you on the doorstep of a bowl game. And yeah, this is a rivalry game. Malik Murphy, not a world beater in any way, but like he's actually had some kind of cool moments, right? He actually used to be a quarterback at Texas, was pretty good there. I think in a couple of relief appearances for Ewers. That was before Archie Manning's time. Oh no, that was last season actually. That was last season because there was a
This
couple
last
times I think
season,
he
yeah.
got. Yeah, because Archie Manning wasn't the backup. Malik Murphy was. Yeah, this Duke team is not bad. Again, I think a lot of people expected Duke to just absolutely crash. Okay, and
I
to be fair,
did.
that was us. Yeah, no, that was
Yep.
us. We expect that, but a pleasant surprise, right? Hey, this isn't bad. And their head coach was like the head coaching hire they had was not a bad head coaching hire. And I think Duke is showing like, hey, you know what? We were serious about football under Mike Elko, and again, they don't need to win the ACC. They want to have a fun team and a good team, and I think that's what they've accomplished here. I think they're pretty happy with that. So, yeah, this team is actually okay, and that's for Duke. That's really good. Having an okay team is really good for Duke.
Didn't expect this, but since we in part 1 talked about this, you just brought to mind randomly Manny Diaz ACC Coach of the Year. would have to say yes.
Yeah. Okay. It'd probably be between him and for Boston College, Bill
Yeah,
O'Brien.
O'Brien. Who
Yeah,
has a better
that'd be
record? Oh, Duke does.
okay. There's some
Let's
asterisks on that, but yes.
Yeah,
But that's
let's look this up. Let's see if Duke plays BC. They do not this season, unfortunately. That would be the play-in game.
yeah.
Um,
But no, again, with the rest of the ACC being an absolute dumpster fire. Yeah. That
yeah,
I
I
mean,
only see one game. I'm going to say this advice. Boy, this is ooh. I'm just going to get short of breath here. Look into the rest of their schedule. There's only one game. My initial thought is that's the one game they can't win, and yet it would be. I'm just going to generically say typical because it's at Miami.
oh, oh, oh,
Look at this.
oh.
Oh man, just keep an eye on that. Oh man, are you kidding me?
I'm betting. Yeah, I'm betting
How
Duke.
how?
I,
Oh
I
my
already know I'm
god.
gonna have Duke money line there, 100%. There's not a
I
question.
I it
You
could fall
know,
apart too. And but man, just
that's the game. That's the game. Crystal Ball is gonna go full crystal ball on. You know, there's gonna be some insane thing that happens in that game. But yeah,
yeah.
Duke is not bad. I'm actually again, we had an opinion on Duke, and again, we are nimble in our opinions. Hey, Duke isn't bad. Like we thought it was gonna crash, but it did not crash. They are doing actually not half bad. And North Carolina, on the other hand, they have decidedly crashed. Like I don't think we're at rock bottom yet. I think 70 points against the Sun Belt team is not rock bottom at this point. Yeah, it's bad. It's pretty bad.
I'm looking. Yeah, Miami, Virginia Tech. I'm just going to give you the rest of their schedule: Virginia Tech, Cal, Louisville, Florida State, Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse. I would say of those teams, maybe probably Cal and Louisville, the only other ones that could really exploit a defensive scheme or planning or coaching advantage to whatever Cam games, whatever holes might still be in Cam Ward's game.
True.
And if it's close, oh my God, that would be, and it would be, oh, that would be so great. And especially if Miami's undefeated. Oh my God. I'm hoping for that so bad. I really want Miami to be undefeated for that game. That would
Yeah.
be the sneaky, awesome. Oh my, sorry. I got to check. If that's on October 12th, my head's going to explode. No, it's November 2nd. Okay.
Oh,
It's
that's 3 days before the presidential election, which means nothing for that, but that means
So
something for
yeah, if
me,
you're
nothing
watching
else.
that, you're going to get a lot of political commercials too. Two teams in swing states on a cheap. It should be probably like on the ACC network. So swing states, cheap commercials. You're going to get a lot of Kamala and Trump commercials in that one. Just buckle up for that
Yes.
one already. All right, let's get back on track here. Northern Illinois, NC State. We have this is not even close. Not even close. And I've made my case for Northern Illinois last week, and Thomas Haddock just laughed at me and took a dump on my head and said, "Yep, thanks for getting on the bandwagon, but time for you to get off." But NC State is just that bad. They don't do anything good. They don't do anything good. They're not good on either side of the ball, and their backup quarterback is no good, no better, no much better than their starter. I think that these numbers are inflated for Northern, but you've got basically similar margin to me. You've got the dog by 24. I've got the dog by what is it, 32. Again, advisedly, this has to be too high. Their offense isn't that good. Their defense isn't that good. But still, if I take 20 points off, I still have them by a comfortable margin here. So I've already played this, and I've got a little bit on Northern Illinois money line as well. Have you played this one?
I'm not sure if I have. I will play that now. I've won some money tonight. We're recording this on Monday night, and I have some wins from Monday Night Football. I'm gonna cash those in and bet some college from that. But no, this is a game, and I think on your end, this is the benefit of the dual model play. Because if I'm sitting here and I see NC State -7 is the line, and I've got 40-16, I'm like, all right, I did something wrong. Clearly, something's
Yep.
wrong. I'm staying away from it. But you're like, actually, I have more. Again, okay, whatever. More, quote unquote. It's basically the same margin. But yeah, like I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we both think this is true. And again, this is a classic game, especially when you look at some non-conference games. It's an ACC team against the MAC team. The ACC team should be favored. Doesn't matter what the ACC team is. The ACC team should be favored. And let's make it 7, make it a touchdown. And that's not how this works. So now, to be fair, is there some Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame in there? Yeah. And then they lost to Thing. But at the same time, I think it's still Yeah, they lost to Buffalo, but I still think this Northern Illinois team is good. I think that was a letdown game. Now this might be the bounce back game where it's, yeah, no, we actually are a legit team. So
Yeah. And if I look here again, going by my measure I just made up here, I've got, if I'm looking at the offensive versus defensive GGAB, I've got a positive 58 here, and I've got a negative 60. So aside from just like not having much of an explosive game, having a subpar quarterback play, I've actually got a more physical team on the Northern Illinois side of the ball. And remember, this is a Northern Illinois team that played Notre Dame, who doesn't really have a good quarterback, and basically their money is made by being a physical team. So it's not like Northern Illinois has got a bunch of fluff in there pumping up that number. So yeah, no, I'm comfortable with this one. Not as comfortable with the next one, and I'd be surprised if you played this because this was a complete UFO that I did not see coming at all. And we talked about this a little bit earlier when we talked about Washington State, and that is we both have the Huskies big here,
yeah,
big, and I actually have them as a lead on both sides of the ball. Now we talked to last week. We talked about Will Rogers quickly fitting in from an apex standpoint to the Jedfish offense. Didn't see the defense, and who knows? Maybe that's again holding Wazoo to like 24 after they, and a Wazoo team has scored like in the 50s against supposedly a good San Jose State defense. He said sarcastically. But yeah, I've got the dog here by 22. You have him by 17. I brought this up on Reed's show, and he said your model's wrong. He did lovely guy, and I just said, yeah, that's why I'm bringing this one up. I want to hear the sane narrative because I have the insane narrative. But we're both there, and I guess this is it right here. And this is really surprising. The
hmm
defensive run game. Um, this surprises me because, and I said, look, my model, and this is, I said, we know what Shiano is and the Shiano brand, and my model's not seeing that from a defensive standpoint. It's seeing them as like a bad defensive team. And part of that's because I guess they were close against Virginia Tech. Curious who else is on their schedule here. Let me just look that up real quick. Rutgers, because they're 3-0. Okay, they played Howard, which is, and then they played Akron. So they really haven't. There's no test there. I know we look at Washington, and my first thoughts are, oh, easy schedule, FCS, which doesn't count, Eastern Michigan, Washington State, and Northwestern. I think that's tougher than Akron and Virginia Tech, though, to be honest with you, right?
yeah.
Um,
I have 2 points on this. So one last week when I saw Rutgers versus Virginia Tech, and I saw that was such a close spread, I was like, that's weird. And my model had basically the same spread, so I'm like, all right, I'm staying away from that one. And I saw the game, and it seemed like it was a blowout, but then all of a sudden Virginia Tech did come back. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. They shouldn't have been able to do that, but okay. And then I saw my line 34-17, and I'm like, that's wrong. Because I saw the spread. I'm like, Rutgers -2. And I was, when I saw that look ahead line, I was so close to pulling the trigger on that one. I was like, yeah, no, 100%. Rutgers is way better than Washington. But then I saw my line, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to touch that. But now that I see you having the same thing,
yeah.
I'm
Well, I
intrigued.
played it. I'm not going to argue with the model, even
Yeah,
though I know that there's some bugs in there, but I just don't know if it's 20 points of bugs. And here's the other reason. Number one, we confirm each other. You do Sims and I just do top level model. I know this number is reasonable based on Will Rogers and that awesome Apex. I can see this in that I've got proof of concept here in the low G gap defensively. I also think that there's probably an element of maybe just the Belichick defense is working out, he said with a surprised tone in his voice. And I was
yeah,
a skeptic too, remember? I have Washington under 6.5 wins. I thought that was hopeless. And I guess if you go back and engineer where they're going to get that 6.5, probably had this as a toss up, worst case. And maybe some of that was just, I don't know if I'm giving the market too much credit for saying, yeah, the Belichick thing's going to work, but I think it's working better now than when you came up with that 6.5, right?
yeah, no, for sure. That's the thing. Very interesting game. I think I will pull the trigger on Washington now. But yeah, it's a very. I did not expect to be doing this. I thought when I saw that line for sure
Yeah.
I was going to be betting Rutgers. But even then, like that line did seem short, right? I was like, Rutgers should be much
Yeah.
bigger. It should be 3.5, but they weren't, and that should have been the first warning sign. This is what the models. To be fair, this is what the model's for. The model is to tell us these things. But like the warning sign maybe was Rutgers should be a bigger favorite than that, and then the model comes in and says it shouldn't even be favored at all.
Plus, Washington traveling on a short week, like making about one of the longest trips in college football from Seattle to Newark. Yeah, interesting. So this could officially be the line that stinks this week. All right, a little more traditional play. This is the last one that we're going to break down in kind of detail here. I don't want to relive everything about the USC game last week. I will just say that you're looking just one angle is going to be the dynamic that USC had with their first conference road game of the season. Now Wisconsin is dealing with that. Wisconsin's pass offense has just been terrible. The new guy, his last name is Locke, is, according to Reed, not even as good as Van Dyke was, and he's been a disaster. You've got only one explosive passing game here, and it's not Wisconsin. Now USC's without their tight end, but given a week to game plan around that, I think that they can find. They have a highly recruited guy in Cade Eldridge, a tight end too, so they can get around that. The pass defense here, this is, I think, the other thing that's just a kind of a death knell. You've got a very bad pass defense here. Now, there's a lot of Jalen Milroe in this Wisconsin number here, but even then, that's a big number because that means you didn't fix it in your other games. On the other hand, you've got a horrible passing game here. Now, you've got Bryson Barnes and Alex Orji in this number, which are dragging it down. But I would think that the Wisconsin passing game is a lot closer to those than it is to Garrett Nussmeier and LSU. I just don't see a lot of points in this one. Both teams not awesome against the run, but you've got, again, that Michigan game in here that's driving that number up a bit. Big picture here, Wisconsin doesn't do anything well on either side of the ball. USC's defense now 4 points better than last year. Offense taking a step back, but you know what? For this spot, it's fine. I've got the favorite by 27. You have them by 21. Line is 14. It's just barely there. I think this is technically a not play, but if you get it for 14, which I did, so this is dual model. If you get it for 14, which it was when I made this, and I've updated the line since, and I got it at 14. You seeing this as a play as well?
Yeah, one reason I'm even leaning to it, even if it is the full 14, is my model has Tyler Van Dyke as a quarterback. I'm not. Which model?
That's
Who do you have as quarterback?
mine's agnostic.
Oh,
So
okay.
it has Van Dyke in there, and it'll have ratably however much Van Dyke is in the historicals this year, and Locke.
Yeah, mine has Van Dyke just for the simple reason that he was the quarterback who played the most snaps in the last game. That's how my model determines it, which there's reasons. Now, I can overwrite it, but eh, I I'll see about that. Like the thing is, it fixes itself longer term, so I don't really need to worry about it because then he'll be the one who starts the more snaps, so it'll fix it next week. But again, though, like you're now looking at rookie quarterback or freshman or whatever quarterback first road start in the Coliseum, thousands of miles away against a USC team that's pissed that they lost last week. Good luck. Good luck with that.
The one thing that keeps it from being really bad is that it's a 12:30 Pacific game, and that makes a big difference as a veteran of the Coliseum. That'll be a late arriving crowd. If it was 5 o'clock, it would be ugly because the Coliseum at 5 versus the Coliseum at 12:30 is about as big as difference as you can get. Late arriving crowd at 12:30, 5 o'clock. It's a very, the folks make it in from the yacht basin and they have their 17 white wines and stuff, and then they get really loud at 5 and they show up on time at 5. All right, we've got a handful of overplays here. You're not with me on any of these. You only agreed with me on the totals on that one Cincy Texas Tech. So a reminder, I need an elite unit, offense for an over, defense for an under in the game. And we need a margin of at least, I think it's 7. That's what I'm going with this week early. I'll give me a little more margin since there's a little immaturity in the numbers here. Fresno State at UNLV. I've got Fresno State as one of the top defenses in the country somehow. I've got the total here at 28. That might be a little low. The thing is, UNLV, I think the market's I think there might be a little bit of that go offense of Brendan Marion in the market. And really, the secret is this is a defensive team. They're not a good passing offense. They run the ball pretty well. 52.5 there. There's a lot of margin there. I'm happy with that. This next one here is probably the most confident I am in any over. We've talked on and on about Central Florida, and then you get a very generous Colorado defense and offense that can probably do some stuff at some point. I've got the total at 74. You're right at the market of basically 63.5, but I like this one too. Any thoughts on those two?
I think of those two, yeah, the Colorado Central Florida over is probably more playable. I don't hate it, but 64 is pretty high though. 3.5, that's a really high number already. My thing is that if we just get to a certain point where this gets to be a blowout, UCF is just going to just run the clock. They're just going to keep running and running and running, and that could kill your over potentially. But
Fair, yeah. If they run at like 7 yards a clip, so they might even still just accidentally trip into a couple touchdowns there,
see
right?
that's the other thing too, right? 'Cause it's a sim. It's this game is like very similar to like the TCU UCF game where they had I think like 80 points or something. It was like 30 something, 30 something, and it was if you look at the stat line, it was like UCF bunch of rushing yards, TCU 400 passing yards, 4 touchdown passes. So it's I think Colorado will be able to score in this game, but Central Florida is going to just absolutely just dump truck them on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's not like 7 yards a clip is might even be generous there. That could be like closer to there could be a bunch of look a 35-yard touchdown run, right? Someone could run from we're in the red zone, and he's gone, it's a touchdown, right? That Colorado defense is bad. Again, Baylor is not good, and you let them put 31 points on you. Yeah,
Yep. All right, I love this next one here. Iowa State. That's a low number, but again, I I think the market's just missing both sides. Iowa State, I had them as the best defense coming in. I had the best team in the Big 12. I had them as the best defense by far in the conference. They're better this year. They're elite this year. And Houston, like we talked about last week, sneaky good pass defense too. So 43 and a half is a low number. For those who don't know, the average in FBS on versus FBS games last year is 53 after being 56 basically forever. So I've got the total at 31. You've got this going over. Not sure how. Maybe I don't know, but I'm really comfortable with this. This is right in my wheelhouse. I think there's a lot the market is missing on this one. Any thoughts
yeah,
on that?
I'm really surprised I have a total that high. I probably won't touch that one, but yeah, I feel like Iowa State should be able to shut Houston down completely, and that should be an underplay. But
Yeah.
yours seems more accurate there.
I'm a little hesitant on this next one, even though we have two elite defenses here in Kentucky and Ole Miss. We've got a good offense in Ole Miss that might screw this up, but I can see Kentucky and the magic of Bush Hamden getting shut out pretty easily here. First conference road game. Ole Miss has been waiting for this game for quite a while. This is like their first test, first conference game. I've got the total at 37 here. I probably won't play a full unit, but I'm not going to argue too much with the model here.
Yeah, I think this one is weird because again, Kentucky seemed to really overperform against Georgia. I don't know what side is best here, but an underplay here isn't horrible. Kentucky really shut down Georgia. That game had 15 points, right? Ole Miss seems pretty good too, but yeah, maybe an underplay here isn't bad either. 53 is a large number for an Ole Miss team that's been pretty smothering on defense, and again, the Kentucky team is also pretty good on defense too. So
Yeah.
I don't hate an underplay there. That seems nice.
All right, we talked about Mr. Horvath at Navy just turning the world upside down. UAB's defense is really bad too. That's not the reason to play this. The reason to play this is the Navy offense. I've got the total here at 82, which might be a little out of control, although I don't know. UAB seems very obliging, so I'm playing this. You've got this a little bit under. I know you're Canadian, but we have to make the old joke. So you have a thing against the armed forces here. You don't like the military.
Apparently, I don't like them to go over the total of 82. I think one of the changes to my model is now, and I don't think I'm going to be able to implement this by the end of the season, but I want to be able to incorporate pacing, but I don't think I'm not going to be able to do that before the end of the season. And I think maybe some teams have a higher pace than others, and I think that might be worse. Your model is catching, because again, you could see mine. Obviously, some are different from the totals, some are similar to the totals, but I think if there's a team that's even higher pacing, I think your model is doing a better job of capturing that.
Yeah, this next one was another light bend total. I think I actually had the total in that like another game at 30 with Michigan State at -3, just because Ohio State's defense is just so dominating. Now they haven't played a Power Five team or Power Four team, as you said before, but I've got a lot of margin here. You've got the total 50. I think you've got a lot more faith in the Michigan State offense than I do. Ohio State hasn't played a tough schedule. I don't know how much to expect from the Michigan State offense. They seem up and down. Surprisingly, Michigan State's got a good defense too. I think they're power rated about a 6.5 or so. So you got two. You've got a good defense and an exceptional defense here. And I think Michigan State's defense is good enough to keep this under, although you've got to basically run on the number.
Yeah, this one's kind of a pass for me. I think I have the spread pretty much locked in with what it is. So I'm probably going to leave that one alone.
All right. I've gotten mixed feelings about this next one for two reasons. I've got this a strong under Oklahoma and Auburn. It's based on Oklahoma's being a good defense. Two concerns is that maybe the new quarterback makes Oklahoma's offense suddenly somewhat functional and basically drives that total up. And I literally do not think it is a stretch at all to say that Auburn quarterback position against this Oklahoma defense is a pick six that is waiting to happen, and that is the absolute enemy of the under better. That's my fear here, but there's enough margin here where I'm still going to play it. But that's my literally my biggest concern.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's a pick six waiting to happen, whoever is the quarterback. And I like that's the thing that's going to kill the under, right? Is it's going to be like it's going to be like 30 something to 10, and then it's going to just be like late game pick six, some DB super like, oh my god, I got the ball, I'm going to go score a touchdown, everybody's celebrating, and you're just like, wow, yeah.
Yep. All right. And last one here, South Alabama LSU. If you're not familiar with South Alabama, that game against App State was not an aberration. They had 80 something against an FCS team. They had just a crazy game against North Texas to open the season. I think it was like both teams were in the 40s or 50s. LSU, actually, their offense is really good this year, statistically, just as good, not quite as good as last year's, but so far, it's not too far off. I've got this total hitting almost 80. And LSU's defense is uh, better with a question mark. I think they're better, but boy, it's not a smooth ride. I'll put it that way. It's not like USC where there's a handful of plays that do you in. They'll have a handful of defensive possessions that are really scary. I've got this one not even close. You've got this basically on the number. You're probably not going to play this one, right?
I consider it. LSU, man, they just keep scoring points and they keep letting other teams score points on them. So I don't hate that as an over. I think basically the market is saying we don't think South Alabama can score, and I think we're saying no, we South Alabama can score. And I think that's where our line is different there. And I think yeah, I think that's where we see the value there. And I don't hate the over there.
Yeah, I'll play like probably half a unit on that. All right, almost done here. Just checking on the preseason predictions. A lot going on last week. As we said, Reed nailed. Boy, I just was stunned when he made it, but he called his shot. Navy over Memphis. Good job by Reed. Isaiah got the dreaded, at least you got a lot of closing line value when you picked USC over Michigan. Can't say that was the wrong play. And Josh, out of nowhere, too, had JMU over North Carolina. So good for him. I had three plays last week, or two, pardon me. I had Eastern Washington over Nevada. That did not happen, but I was right on Arkansas over Auburn. Very proud of myself. Made it my theme this year that Auburn stinks. Upcoming this week, I've got Western Michigan over Marshall. Not sure how I feel about that, although love the Broncos. You got to win this one, please. And I really like my Louisiana against Wake. I'm not even sure what the line is, but Louisiana, if anything, I'm just a little worried about a come down game after hosting and losing to Tulane in a tough one. Do you have that line available? I'm curious what that
I'm trying
Louisiana.
to find it right now. I saw it. I think it's Wake minus 2.5 or something. Like it's very close.
Oh,
3, Wake minus 3.
no, I would not be comfortable with that as a Wake guy. I'll just say
No.
that. And now I was a week early, but now we've got Akron at over Ohio for Duck as well. So, anything else, Robert, or else we're going to call it a day here and say
I
thank
think
you to
we're
everybody.
yeah, I think we're gonna call it a wrap on week 5. Yes, no, that's a week 5 preview. We'll be back here with the week 5 review, and I believe we're gonna have our top 25 next week or top
We
30,
should.
whichever one we
Yep.
decide. Yeah, we'll be previewing that in our pod, and then that will be releasing on Tuesday. So yeah, I'm excited. Basically, one of the issues last year was that I could never really figure out which graphics to use. So I'm going to automate that in the next 5 days. I'm going to figure out
Cool.
how to do that, and we're going to automate it. And so that will make it easier. And again, I think I really liked our top 25 last year. I thought that was really nice. I thought it was a really nice thing to have. I thought it was better than the actual top 25. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
even going to be even more relevant this year because of the 12 team football playoff. So I
Yeah.
think now all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, you didn't get the top 4 right, but now guess what? It doesn't matter because even if a team lost a game randomly, they're still in the playoff now. And then we might say, hey, this team that's 8 is better than this team that's number 3. So watch out, right? Yeah, I'm excited for that. So stay tuned for that for next week. Our top 25, which includes nobody in the Associated Press and no coaches either. We just use math and the BCS, and basically have resurrected the BCS computer, which is cool because we like computers. See you guys next week for that.
All right. Thank you all for listening, watching. We appreciate it, and good
Yeah,
luck this weekend.
thank you. See ya.